So, uh, welcome to our seventh presentation, and this is on internally displaced people. We were displaced from Nyankundi and joined other displaced people down there in Awicha. Let me share screen and show you our pictures. And we were internally displaced people. 2002, displaced from Nyankundi down to Awicha, some
150 kilometers.
further south. We lost all our belongings at Nyankundi, our books, our clothes, our beds.
The three handmade duvet covers that I had made, one for our bed and matching ones for the two boys that we brought from Canada.
But we escaped, and I took a small bag with a computer and my passport, not much more than that.
And a chocolate bar, I think.
Oh, I brought a chocolate bar back, did I?
Yes.
We met up in the UK. We had options to work in some 8 countries. We've told you this already, but we had a big discussion with Dr. Kambali and Awicha and our church in the United Kingdom, and we decided to join our displaced colleagues in displacement in DR Congo. They had walked 150 kilometers south to a different province and to a different hospital, much smaller hospital than Nyankundi was. But they welcomed us with open arms about a month and a half after the other people had arrived walking.
There were two babies born along the way, and they are very healthy adults today.
People still continued to trickle in, including two of our teachers, one of whom came with cholera that he picked up somewhere on the 150 kilometers. We flew in a little bit later, as I say, about a month and a half after the first arrivals there in Awicha. This is the foothills of the Ruwenzori Mountains just beside Awicha, and there is the town of Awicha. Cut out of the forest, you can see the forest on the far side. On this side were a number of coffee plantations, where the forest had been removed.
At that time, it was said that Owicha had a population of about 80,000 people, but the counting of displaced people said that there were 50,000 displaced in Owicha itself, 50,000 just a bit north of us, and 50,000 in the city of Beni, south of Owicha.
We arrived by plane. The others had arrived on foot. And this is a photograph taken a little bit later. You can see us coming into land on the grass airstrip. But the airstrip was 2 kilometers long, and they only needed one for the use of this small little plane. So they allowed people, the displaced people, to erect houses on the far end of the runway. And you can see the white tarpaulins of the houses constructed on the airstrip. This is the main administration building at Awicha Hospital.
It was delightfully clean and tidy and well maintained, and it was a pleasure to join in the team there. There were always lots of people to be seen, women bringing babies for baby clinic. This could be the pharmacy on the right, and people waiting to fill their prescriptions.
We'd flown over the foothills of the Ruwenzori. Just occasionally you could catch a glimpse of the Ruwenzori Mountains. Amazing, 16,000 feet high and with snow on it the whole year round. Right on the equator, yet high enough to maintain the snow. But the snow's been melting, global warming. Used to be 3 square miles of eternal snow on the top, but now it's down to 1 square mile. So maybe soon there won't be any snow on Ruwenzori again.
Just once or twice a year, we were able to see Ruwenzori out our dining room window, at sunrise in the morning at about 6 o'clock. But usually there were too many clouds. But once or twice, it was really worth the view. One of the challenges that I was given was to look after premature babies, and I was delighted to do so. They're precious little ones, and any baby under 2 kilos needed a nasogastric tube for supplementary milk to go down. Some of them can breastfeed a little bit, but they cannot breastfeed enough to gain weight. So under 2 kilos, they all had a nasogastric tube. The mothers expressed their milk. We had no artificial milk. The mothers expressed their milk and added that to what baby could breastfeed.
And on an adult bed, so that the mother sleeps with the baby to keep it warm.
We actually had 6 beds. They're like camp cots in this relatively small room, but that meant that the women's body heat kept the room fairly warm as well. One day I took a group of student nurses in, and the first thing one of the men said was, "Oh, open the windows, it's hot in here." And he'd no sooner said it than he said, "Oh, no, forgot. You know, the babies need to be kept warm." So it was a nice, cozy place for the mothers and their babies. No incubators.
And I'm talking to a patient who needs an operation and just finding out all the details.
Whoa. Well, our communication was limited, but we came to the conclusion that we really needed to buy a satellite phone. Now, we weren't supposed to be seen using it because some people thought that that was the way that rebels called in their friends to make an attack. And it was usually after dark that we would go outside and search around for the satellite and see if we could connect. And then I had to do my banking by satellite phone. I think it was transferring money from our Canadian account to an American account so that I had money on which I could write an American check that was supposed to be less expensive. But well, it was a treasure that we used for the few years that we needed it.
This was way beyond landlines. No landlines have ever been in this part of the world, but before the arrival of cell phones as well. So this was our only means of communication. Lots of discussions as to what needed to be done. This is in a temporary building, um, wood frame and plastic, and various leaders of the community getting together and deciding what decisions need to be made about the camp and the displaced people. Internally displaced people are people who are forced to leave their homes but remain within the country borders. Refugees have crossed an international border. And refugees receive far more aid from the United Nations and all of its subsidiary organizations. There's room for much more aid to them than there is to the internally displaced people. But the World Food Programme will try and feed them for some 6 months, but then they're on their own. Then they need to have built some kind of reserve, found somewhere perhaps where they can dig a garden. Um, of course, rather than living out in the camp, many will try and move in with relatives. And one family we know houses 32 people in a very small little house. They live outside most of the time, but uh, cover all the floors with mattresses in the evening for people to sleep on. So here are some new arrivals. They've just arrived and they've got some kind of sunshade there and they've got a blanket, not much else. And they're looking to find some housing. This is the first thing you've got to find when you arrive. You need some housing. And the the easiest way to do that is to build some kind of a shack with any locally available branches, sticks, and tie it together with palm fronds, and then wait for United Nations to give you a tarpaulin that you could put over the top of it. And then this is what the the village, the internally displaced people's village will look like. Put some mud in the walls, and you have some privacy and a small space inside there. But the houses are very close together, and no room for anything other than a pedestrian walkway or place for your bicycle between the houses. Second big need is water, and initially water arrived in a tanker truck as soon as it could be arranged, and a truck and a trailer, both full of water. It's obviously had petrol in it before. And then the water discharged into a plastic sack, which is lying on the ground, some kind of a shade on it to keep the sun off it, um, put in there by one of the different NGOs, or you will call them ONGs, organizations which are non-governmental. And never seen so many names in all my life. This is obviously put up by something called Solidarity, but it looks as though funds have come from UNICEF in order to buy and put this water reservoir here for the displaced people.
I think at first you think that's just a shelter for people and that's a sandy floor in it. But actually, if you look carefully, it's about maybe a foot deep, and that's the bladder full of water.
We discovered a pump in one of the storerooms of Wicha Hospital that had been given but hadn't been installed. So we got Robert, who's there using the pump after he'd installed it, got Robert to dig a hand dug well um, down, I don't know, 20 feet, 20 meters or so. And then we installed it. It was quite a problem to know exactly how the central plastic part of the pump was supposed to be arranged. It had been, we discovered after working on the problem for some 4 or 5 hours, we discovered that the essential part of the pump had been inserted in the bottom just for travel purposes. When we got it sorted out in the right order, then it worked very well. So water was always a problem, trying to find somewhere where you could find some relatively clean water, a big, big need. And the third need is food. And uh, we got involved in January 2003 when a new group of refugees or displaced people came down from Bunya just immediately after Christmas, and they had absolutely nothing. So we put them in one of the schools that were on holiday, Christmas holidays, and they desperately needed some food. They'd been walking and hadn't got any. They had several children with them as well. So we started a very small feeding program just for these few displaced people.
Maybe 200.
No difficulty in buying food in the market. The displaced people didn't have any money, so they weren't buying up all of the market supplies. So we were able to buy these 2 sacks of maize corn and make some porridge.
Here are the ladies in the feeding program that we set up, measuring out cupfuls of either cornmeal, locally made, not degermed as you buy here, but whole cornmeal or mixed with soya. And soya is very nutritious, so it's very helpful to have the corn and soya together.
And just a little taste of sugar just to make it a little bit more acceptable. And here are the ladies actually mixing and cooking the porridge over a firewood,
And the children
three stones.
and the children were told that if they wanted some porridge, would they please bring one stick? So every child who wanted some of this porridge was asked to bring a stick, and then they were given a cup of porridge. And when the first round of 50 children, perhaps, or 20 children had finished their cup of porridge, then the cups were all taken back, washed, and ready for the next round of porridge for the children who brought one stick. Tasty, delicious, especially if you haven't had anything.
We were concerned to feed particularly the children. They need more nutrition per kilo of body weight than adults do. But some of the adults got fed as well.
And no child can eat once a day and have sufficient food. Their digestive system is just too small, so they need to be fed at least twice, preferably 3 or 4 times a day, to get into them the amount of food that they need for healthy growth and development.
It's a little group of them either waiting to get some food or just having eaten. We had a gift of food as well from the Church of Christ in Congo, ECC, and this is Bill Clemmer, a great friend from normally working in Kinshasa. I'm not sure where this food exactly came from, but he and another American brought it over to us to be distributed to the people in the IDP camp. A little later on, when things started to get organized, then the World Food Program arrived and they organized a distribution. Free food, often a whole sack of cornmeal, maybe a tin of oil, cooking oil as well. Just very basic supplies, but there might be enough for a family for several days.
Sometimes a sack of beans as well, dry beans like pinto beans.
And there are some of the sacks ready for distribution there, and people sorting out who is entitled to get this food, who has not had any food for some time. Um, I'm not sure exactly of the way that this was administered. This is a product of Uganda. We were surprised to see some food from just over the border, but most of the food came from the United States. And this is sorghum from the United States being taken away by some of these IDPs. So the World Food Programme does leave something to be desired. We thank them sincerely for the food that they provide. They recruit local people. Generally, somebody who has got the contract will recruit most of his family, and one is fearful that there's a certain amount of food which disappears. All of the food has printed on it that it's not for sale, not to be resold, but it appears all the time in the market for people who want to sell what they've been given uh, for a little money. We did have some cases of pellagra. That's a lack of vitamin B6. You notice some sores around the mouth. But if you have a diet which is entirely of maize, and particularly maize which has been degerminated, which most of this maize meal had, then you're liable to get this disease. But you have to eat a diet purely of maize. But obviously, some people were doing that. They didn't have anything else to eat other than this sacks of maize, which they'd been given by World Food Program. And we've already mentioned that they were entitled to food for 6 months. And then after 6 months, they're supposed to find their own way, somehow or other, to cultivate a field or to move somewhere in with other relatives. Um, and they were encouraged, of course, to return to where they've come from within the 6 months. Fourth need, reconciliation. This is a seminar which was organized by a small group of Congolese, together with the help of a Welsh lady, Rhiannon, who came for a few weeks. And
She's a psychiatrist.
by invitation, a lot of local leaders were invited to come and take part in this seminar. One of the activities that they did, they were encouraged to write on a small piece of paper the worst thing that happened to them during the war, during the Troubles, the worst thing that happened to them on their flight from wherever it was that they could not go back to, and that those little notes were pinned on a cross, and the cross was taken outside, the pieces of paper were burnt, just as a way of encouraging people to forget all of the very difficult circumstances that they had come from.
Or forgive, perhaps. These people were from different tribal groups, so it was quite a mixture of people, and they had, in some ways, reason to have hostile feelings towards other people in this group. But they burned up their hostile feelings, and there was some degree of reconciliation.
Now, I'm going to show you a video from the Centre de Résolution des Conflits. This is a center in Bunia, which is available and organizes available for whoever has a big problem with conflict. But they organize a number of different seminars and have a number of different programs to try and resolve some of the conflicts in this part of the world. The province of Ituri, in the northeast of the Democratic Republic of Congo, has been the site of many inter-ethnic conflicts. Control of the land, with its gold mines, agricultural and livestock resources, is the main cause of conflict. As a result, many people have left their rural villages and arrived in Bunia, the provincial capital, where they feel somewhat safer. They are housed under a tarpaulin given by the United Nations in several displaced people's camps, or they move in with distant relatives.
My name is Rehema Musanzi, and I am the coordinator of an organization, Centre Résolution Conflit. We are a non-governmental organization that has existed for almost 30 years. Our work has involved a lot of mending relationships between communities in Ituri. We worked on the reduction of the tension that existed between communities here, and worked on organizing intracommunal consultations to better understand the root causes of the conflict, aim of helping them to come up with a solution to the issue, involving, of course, key stakeholders in the area, including authorities and members of the communities that were influential, and also in helping them to understand the many strategies that already existed within the communities traditionally, and also new approaches that they could use in bringing about sustainable peace. Also work with communities in identifying members of the communities that have been recruited forcefully, or even those that have intentionally joined armed groups, and have been able to help with together with the communities, negotiating the release of these vulnerable adults as well as former child soldiers. And in the last 10 years or so, we have been able to reintegrate over 5,000 vulnerable adults who were previously in armed groups and are now members of their communities. And in addition to that, over 1,000 former child soldiers, work for which we were actually selected by UNESCO in 2020 as the recipient of the UNESCO Madanjit Singh Prize for the promotion of tolerance and non-violence. And in addition to that, we have also worked with communities on community development, specifically in the province of Ituri. A lot of communities that live in and around the mining sites fall and become victim to militia groups and end up being forced to mine artisanally for the sake of fueling the activities of these militia groups. And so we asked ourselves a question a few years ago on how can we as a peace-building organization use gold, transform gold from a war mineral or even a conflict mineral into a peace mineral. And so in that process, and help them to form artisanal and small-scale mining cooperatives, as part of which we provided training on understanding conflict and conflict transformation, and helped them to create, together with them, create peace committees that would be able to identify conflicts that were still latent and figure out mechanisms of dealing with these conflicts early, and also to be able to transform the conflicts that already existed and even resolve the ones that were already wreaking havoc within the communities. This particular project, which we call Peace Gold, we've been able to identify children that work in the mines or even the pits that's owned by these cooperatives, and we have reintegrated over 140 children in schools. These are children that were working in mines, and at the same time also identified women, mostly also pregnant women, whose roles were essentially to do what a jaw crusher would do. And these were women who were basically crushing these rocks using their bare hands and hammers. And so we were able to, together with our partner Peace Direct, create a fund where these women would be able to loan these women some microcredits of between $50 to $200 that enabled them to create their own revenue generating activities, to take them away from the pits, and to help them to create their own activities. Aside from that, we were able to also reintegrate some former combatants who were active in previous militia groups such as UPC and FNI, and were able to help them to create social cohesion within the cooperatives, and also to promote peaceful cohabitation. As a country, as a province in Ituri, we cannot develop unless we build peace.
So these are the folk there on the end of the runway at Owicha, and they're just getting settled. Lots of children. Half the population of Congo is under 15 years of age. Uh, Parents perhaps still building a shack, and children running, playing around. There were some toilets. Again, another different NGO, non-governmental organization, would have dug some pit toilets there on the edge of the camp that people could use. View from an airplane, obviously flying over the displaced people's camp, and you can see the suburbs of Uwicha in the background.
There were showers as well, but one of the challenges of the showers was that most people only had the clothes that they were wearing. So, well, they could take their clothes off, have a shower, and put them back on. But part of the teaching in the camps was that they needed to use some soap and have a bath and keep clean and wash their clothes. And the teachers who were doing that realized that these people simply could not because they didn't have soap and because they didn't have any other clothes to put on. So at some point, we bought boxes and boxes of soap, and the team distributed them in this camp.
This is a slightly better camp. This was put up by with some funds from Nyankundi, funds given specifically because people knew all about Nyankundi and the medical work there. And this was put up with some sawn timber and slightly larger
Houses.
houses. They look rather like a holiday camp.
Now, one of the things that the workers discovered was that there were some women who, many of the women had only the clothes that they were wearing. But as time went on, there were women who were wearing a wraparound skirt, but it was so torn and worn out that they could see their body through the wraparound skirt. And that's a very unacceptable dress. So these ladies needed some clothing. And the standard for women is two peñas, each one being 2 yards. So the team went shopping with the funds that we had been provided with and bought all of these pieces, but they actually come in 6 yard lengths. So they needed to be cut into the 2 yard lengths, and women would definitely prefer to have two matching pieces as opposed to non-matching pieces. And we were able to hire a lady who was displaced from Bunya, but her daughter had a sewing machine. And so she was able to sew up the edges and present and sort out the material so that if there was 2 yards left from one piece, then she could find 2 yards left from another piece that was a match. Boy, it sure doesn't look to me like there are many matches there, but that's what she was doing and getting them ready to give them to the ladies. So the ladies were given two pieces of cloth if you could see their body through what they were wearing.
Everybody was looking for some kind of income. And what many were doing were breaking open palm kernels. The palm tree oil palms produce a nut which has a fleshy outside and a hard, stony inside. And the fleshy outside is where the palm oil is, and the inside stone is usually just thrown away. But if you spend a lot of time cracking the shell, opening it up, you'll find a kernel inside which can be used to make soap, and they were able to sell these palm kernels for funds. Um, the shells were just thrown away. Nobody was interested in them, but the palm kernel could be sold in order to make soap. So here's a fellow who arrived with a sewing machine, and he's got some work doing sewing for different people, and hopefully he's being paid for that as well.
Well, one thing was making uniforms for the nurses who weren't wearing a uniform when they left, and after walking 150 kilometers, it wouldn't be good for work anyway. So he made a lot of nurses' uniforms in white fabric that was provided.
So I'm going to show you some more videos. First, just a video of the camp in Bunia today. These are pictures taken quite recently. The other still pictures that we've been showing you date from 2002, 2003, but these are pictures taken 2023, 2024, and the rebâtisseurs are offering some training programs in order to provide some kind of employment for people and some kind of income for some of these internally displaced people.
C'est ça.
Tu hapa.
Asidari hapana.
Ile baba Amerika yake. Amerika.
No, hapana.
Iko. Everybody here?
Rebâtisseurs is a Christian organization based in Bunia, in eastern part of the Democratic Republic of the Congo in the Ituri province. So among the activities we do, being in a war-torn country, number one, we are working towards peace building. We do this through counseling, mediation, and organizing peace summits. So with these displaced people, apart from the food we give, but also we organize some of them who are strong enough and willing enough to work, so that we have developed farms, agricultural farms with some families of these displaced people, so that they can produce food for themselves, and it gives them more dignity and responsibility as we do this. And then the number three thing we do here is giving them skills. Those who can acquire some skills, we have a skill school here, which we call Bright Future. And in this training, we have several kind of skills we are giving. We train them in tailoring, we train some in catering, we train others in hair and beauty salon, we train the young men in driving, and the others in car repair, mechanic kind of, and we train others in agriculture and cattle raising pastoral kind of skills, but we also train others in photo and video, and those who have finished like high school, we train them in computer skills. The main aim is giving them these skills so that they may get some kind of a job which can help them survive and also organize their future in that way. So that is what we are doing in Rebâtisseur for now.
So just a few pictures of life at Owicha. This is somebody who's buying gold dust, done quite openly. The government prohibited this at one stage, but then when the government couldn't purchase the gold, and when the government mines were no longer working, it was allowed, the local population was allowed to pan for gold and to sell the gold wherever they possibly could. And probably this gold dust will be taken over the border to Uganda, and it will be exported from Uganda. But this is obviously an artisanal gold digger, and he's selling his gold dust. Lovely to see families sharing, and this is women in the hospital with their babies, sharing food that they have cooked, and
or that their family has brought to them, perhaps, but not just keeping it to themselves, but putting it all together and sharing.
somebody questioning what's going on. And as I mentioned before, the market was always very busy every day of the week. People bringing food, bringing produce from their gardens to sell here in the market, and there never seemed to be any kind of a scarcity of food in Owicha. We could buy sacks of cornmeal quite easily if we wanted to. Nancy was down at the market uh, at least once a week, and there she is buying some aubergines and the general activities in the market going on behind her. This is obviously a sack in the foreground, a sack of donated corn with a symbol on it which indicates it probably come from Aid USA. And the ladies there are divvying out some of the corn that's come out of the sack there and probably selling it. Not supposed to, but that's probably what they're doing. They've got a sack and they want some funds that they can use in whatever way they want to. So they will be selling these quantities of corn to whoever wants it.
Might, from its color, actually be sorghum, which has a reddish tinge to it. But sorghum is used just the same way as corn is. It can be pounded into a flour and made into a dough.
Some of our nursing students came down. We mentioned before they came down just before several of them came down just before their final exams, and we conducted those exams at Owicha when they arrived. But we provided some accommodation for them just behind Nancy there in the back of a shop. They are a lovely group, and we are in touch with several of them right till today.
Malosi did her first post-high school degree with us, and then she married a doctor and had a family, but then she decided that she wanted some more education, and they had a house very close to our college in the city, and so she came back and did her second post-high school degree and did so well that she was taken on staff at the college, and that's where she is now. This gal on the left is Claudine, was actually a staff member at the time this picture was taken, and currently she's married to the
governor.
her husband is the chief of the cabinet in Bunya. We had a lovely dinner with them just in March of 24, and it's lovely to see that she has not suffered, shall we say, from being displaced by the war.
We would walk through the camp every now and then, find out if there are any major needs that maybe we could help with. But people seem to appreciate us coming, saying, well, lovely to know that we're not forgotten. Um, Not a lot of visitors, but they appreciated that we remembered them and tried to show some love. Back home, preparing for lectures and notes in our house that they had given us. Beautiful setting here. This is a shaving brush tree and it has flowers like this the whole year round. Somebody has brought a rose, Queen Elizabeth rose, brought a cutting from abroad, and yeah, roses grow very, very well here. Sometimes they get eaten by insects or goats or whatever, but this one's got an insect on it, but just a beautiful rose. And that's a kingfisher, uh, one of the birds in the area, blue-tailed kingfisher, I think is called. And lots of rain. This is tropical rainforest again, rain and thunderstorms. There's some corn there in the foreground. This is church. Just opposite this is the actual church building, but because there were so many people, displaced people, school kids, that they held the services outside so everybody could fit in. A lot of white shirts there, but probably because that's the school uniform, a white shirt and blue trousers or a blue skirt. Um, that's what primary school students are supposed to wear, and it may be that they don't have any other clothes other than school uniform.
Was always amazing to me that so many of the shirts were so white when they have a minimum of clean water and minimum of soap, but every day the children going to school had lovely white shirts.
After fighting in Niamkhuni in 2002, that I was involved in, heavy fighting did take place in Bunia in 2003. And after that, there were only 7,000 people that remained around the United Nations headquarters. Artemis forces from France restored the peace, but there are now well over 1 million people living in Bunia. There's been just an enormous growth in Bunia since 2002. I mean, people coming back to reclaim their houses, but a lot of people moving into Bunia because it's quieter in town rather than in the rebel-held areas around town.
That's more secure, quieter and more secure.
Within security around Bunia, thousands have moved inside because they feel safer. There are about 6 camps for internally displaced people in Bunia today. They need to be able to return to the countryside where fields are available and housing is cheap, but most of them, if they haven't gone back yet, it's because their area is still not safe. There needs to be security. This is one of the camps that was actually just being built when this photograph was taken. It's much bigger now, being built by the Norwegians, Norwegian Refugee Council, taking quite a part there to build better housing for these internally displaced people.
And the land was provided by the Catholic Church.
So this is a very typical site in Bunia at the moment, and people still have not moved back to the country areas that they came from. As far as needs are concerned, there is a need for education for the children, primary school, secondary school, university education. Primary school, the government has decreed that all primary school education should be free, and the government, I believe, has received some money for primary school education, but not much of it trickles down to our part of the world, a long, long way from the capital city. But nevertheless, schools are encouraged to take in large classes of people just so that everybody gets a little bit of education.
It's quite variable, the amount of the number of teachers who are paid and the number of teachers who need to keep on teaching even though they're not getting paid.
And a school for deaf children used to have about 170 people in it, but now it's got
737 at the last count.
just because the government is encouraging any schools available to take more of these children so they get some kind of education. There's a need for scholarships for students who want to study even secondary school or mainly undergraduate studies. And then scholarships are needed for teachers and specialists. We have a large number of doctors, but they've all had a very, very basic education, and most of them would profit enormously from some specialist training in surgery or internal medicine, midwifery, and they need scholarships. So I think we're going to end up with several videos here. Welcome to Congo. We're in the tropics, and sometimes it rains, and sometimes it rains quite hard for a short time.
At this point, the rain came in the door.
And this is what the roads, 99% of which are unpaved, this is what the roads look like after the rain.
It's very unacceptable to splash anyone and get them muddy.
And then, of course, the bright, hot sunshine dries the road out after the rain, and you have enormous amounts of dust.
The roads are not quite wide enough for the heavy traffic because the grass grows in from the sides. This bus is navigating carefully so as not to fall over.
Very heavily laden, somewhat top-heavy. We received a very, very warm welcome from lots of different groups. This is the former governor of the province who invited us for a meal with a number of important people from the town.
Alors on a complété un peu le tout. Il y a d'abord le couple Wood.
This is where we really focus most of our time and energy, and there are two big amphitheaters that hold 300 and a smaller one that holds 200, and that helps with the bigger classes. Just coming into view on the left is a block of offices that the heads of department have each a place where the students know to find them.
And there are two large blocks or classrooms, but we try and make the teaching as practical as possible, and here they are. Using microscopes. We have a very close relationship with Shalom Christian University, which was founded by the same group of churches as the medical center. And I have been teaching some of the medical students. This is the second year medical class, teaching some histology. Lots of committee meetings, and here a group from Shalom and a group from the medical center discussing cooperation together.
Reverend Katembo was the administrator of Shalom and is now the executive administrator of Medical Center.
Encouraging to see medical students singing as a group in one of the small churches.
It is a special blessing to our hearts to join this congregation of more than 1,000 on Sunday mornings, French speaking, for a wonderful time of worship and teaching. Reverend Jean-Marc is one of the 5 pastors who teaches, preaches, and brings much blessing to our hearts and to many others.
Here's one of the local markets selling beans, and the market can be very crowded at times. Very difficult to see how they can do any kind of physical separation there. And again, in the displaced people's camps, little shacks built very close one to the other, and difficult to see how something like coronavirus can't just sweep through a settlement like this.
This new camp, I think, could have as many as 1,000 little houses, but they're very close together, and we pray that God will spare them the ravages of COVID-19.
CME has 3 hospitals in the area. This is the Bunia Hospital. Quite crowded inside the ward buildings. People come and spend the day there with their relatives who are in the hospital. Here we are down in Beni, and a hospital there, and some of the doctors outside the main entrance to the hospital. Dr. Sami, a fully qualified surgeon trained through the PAC system, Pan-African Academy of Christian Surgeons, doing a fantastic job. We left fairly quickly at the middle of March, in large part due to advice from the Canadian Embassy. We left from Bunia, drove 45 kilometers down to Nyankundi, and here we are at the MAF base at Nyankundi, and we took a plane from here, just a 15-minute flight to the edge of Congo. And then crossing over the border by boat. The Semeliki River is the border between Congo and Uganda, and then we flew out of Uganda back to Canada. We pray with us that we can return again next year.
Songs and dances are used to heal wounds in the hearts of these children who have fled their villages and are now living in the Bulengo Internally Displaced Persons Camp. AGIRRDC is an organization of young volunteers who arrive early in the morning to give the children a smile.
I come here to the camp to sing and look after these children. There is no salary that motivates me to do this work, but what motivates me is the joy they give off. When I see them smile, that's what makes me happy.
Some young displaced people have begun to join the volunteers. Sylvie Baziga fled the town of Sake, 27 kilometers away, and lives with a host family in Goma. Sylvie says, having witnessed the horrors of war, she takes advantage of the company of these young volunteers to pass on messages of hope in the songs she sings for other displaced young people.
We're displaced people. We fled the war. I escaped safely. And to say thank you to God is to come and sympathize with my brothers and sisters who are in the camps. Through song, we promise them a better future.
These songs and dances are bearing fruit, according to some residents of the camps.
Dancing and singing with the children helps them cope after constant sounds of bombs that often traumatize them. When they dance, we see they have hope, and we thank this initiative.
In addition to singing and dancing, The young volunteers, through voluntary contributions, give out porridge and cookies to help children at risk of malnutrition. On this particular day, the volunteers fear they won't have enough for all.
Today we hope to serve more than 500 children because many are hoping to come and take porridge today. We could serve between 500 and 600 children. The difficulty we often encounter is overflow because sometimes there are children we can't serve. There are also parents who ask us for porridge, especially pregnant women, which often means we don't have enough to give.
The young volunteers' help for the children comes at a time when humanitarian organizations and the Congolese government are unable to help all the displaced. In the camps around the town of Goma, displaced people are running out of food. There are also reports of some hunger-related deaths and disease outbreaks linked to crowding and poor sanitation. For VOA Africa, I'm Zanem Netizaidi.
Well, I hope that gives you some idea of life in a displaced people's camp in Bunia. Not an easy life, not at all, but we trust that there is hope on the horizon.